Hello and welcome to episode 62 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host, and with me, as always, is Derek. We're gonna just skip the whole "what have you up to" in Flesh and Blood this week because we did the same fucking thing. Oh god, that was way under 30 seconds. That was 15. Ah, shit. Well, I fucked the algorithm up already. At any rate, well, that happened. So sure. So we're just going to dive straight into news and notes because that's what we did. We were at the Indianapolis Calling, and we saw a lot of you at the Calling in Indy. Only about 70% of you couldn't identify Charmer or pick him out of a lineup, which is, I think, on the low end. Usually it's closer to like 90%. So good job by you guys.
I was going to say, I think 70 was probably too generous considering somebody approached you and said that you were Charmer
while you were standing next to me. That's the part that is amazing, is they walk up to me and they say, and bear in mind, I am wearing a Flesh and Pod hockey jersey with my name on the back. And the person walks up to me and is like, "You're with Flesh and Pod? Man, Charmer, I love the show." And I'm like, "That's Charmer." And yeah. He's like, "Oh shit, I'm just so confused right now." And I'm like, "Okay, well, so are we."
That was apparent, but that's okay because somebody that I've known for literally like 25 years also didn't recognize me when I bumped into him. So on the off chance you listen to this, Carl, I forgive you, but that was it was just a wild weekend of everybody confusing me for somebody else, and then me introducing myself as Tan and Grace as much as possible. So
you also said what were your lines for the Tannen thing? And also Carl's probably just shooting an angle, but what were your lines for the Tannen thing? My name's Tannen Grace, and I want you to remember, go fuck yourself or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I made it very obvious I was joking, and I don't want Tannen to get in trouble or anything, but it was just me making fun of the fact that at Worlds somebody approached Tannen and apparently thought Tannen was me, which is just wild to me that like people would confuse us, and even more so like that they would confuse Tannen for me because Tannen I think is just more recognizable than me as far as like the Flesh and Blood community goes. He's been the face of many events, but also a pretty iconic American flag bit, et cetera, et cetera. So like, I don't know. I just always laugh whenever I think about that story of him messaging me out of the blue and being like, "Hey man, somebody just came up and they were like, 'Hey Charmer, I love blah, blah, blah.'" So this weekend I introduced myself a few times as Tan and Grace so that somebody would get the other end of the spectrum, and we'll just continue to confuse people until the end of time.
And maybe at some point Matt Rogers will know your name. Who knows?
Yeah, Matt Rogers also still doesn't know my name.
Which is perfect.
I've met him, I don't know, 4 or 5 different events. I've been to dinners with him. Like there are photos of us like all at Fogo, and he doesn't remember me or know my name. No so clue. That just again further goes to the Charmer is forgettable. I was thinking about this actually because you said you had no idea what it is about me that makes me uniquely forgettable, and I'm starting to think that I might just have a genetic superpower. I don't know why it came to me, but this weekend when you were talking about it, I remembered an episode of TV from the hit series Dark Angel starring Jessica Alba. And there was a character whose like superpower mutation thing or whatever was that people would forget his face. Like he did other things as well, but like part of his thing was like nobody would ever remember him except for because she was part of the same program, like she was able to. And there was this like sappy arc where eventually like she broadcast his face over TV or whatever so that people would finally get to know what a good person he was, blah, blah, blah. But the point was like he literally had a superpower that it was like people forget me.
So this is your superpower.
This is apparently me. I'm a mutant from an apocalyptic future starring Jessica Alba.
Wasn't that produced by James Cameron of True Lies fame?
So. I think so. It only lasted like 2 seasons, and it featured the standard. It was like a CW show before CW existed. It was ahead of its time.
It was on Fox.
Aired today on CW, like it would be a huge hit because it was just like campy, pretty people with sexual tension Like I remember like she falls for the dude in the wheelchair and then he's cured, but then he like gets some disease where they literally can't touch. My wife loves that show, by the way. So that's how I know like it was way ahead of its time.
I just found out way more about your life than I want to.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm glad that we're
So
friends.
anyway, now that we've derailed in the first 15 minutes with a giant F-bomb and Dark Angel references for the people that are probably too young to even know what that show is.
Yeah, but it's easily Googleable. Yeah, it's easily Googleable. It's fine. I mean, I think you underestimate the power of the Fappers in driving comparisons or fame, and that's why Tannen was referred to as you. You're gaining on him in the popularity scale due to your involvement here. I'm going to at least let that be my headcanon because I don't got anything fucking else with that. Like, sure, whatever. But in case you're living under a rock, which if you were, I mean, it's probably cozy. I don't know, like a hobbit hole kind of. But we were all in Indiana. Not all of us, but most of us were in Indianapolis, and at least 500 players were playing in the Calling and 200 in the Battle Hardened. So there's 700 individual entries right there, and there are just other people around doing things. And so, I had a blast. And we're going to get into that, but first we're going to talk a little bit about results. I dropped in from the Calling at 2-2. The reason being that SC, like, it was announced over the intercom loudspeaker that only the top 64 would advance to day 2. And I lost in round 2, and then I lost in round 4, and I'm like, okay, that's dead for top 64. So not going to day 2. I would rather go cube with Jordan and Abby, which is what I did. I mean, I dropped and I went and cubed. Then, like, after round 5, they announced that was a mistake, and it was top 64 or X2 and better, whichever one had more players, which obviously was going to be X2 or better at 500 players. And I'm like, I asked a judge on the floor if the top 64 part was accurate and was told yes. Now, so that was my calling, is I dropped at 2-2 because I thought I was dead, and I was not. I was still alive. I could have kept playing. However, I did win the cube draft, so there is that. There is, I get to hang my hat on something. And then I did play the Battle Hardened because I got to play Kasai, and that's all I want to do sometimes is just jam some Kasai. It's fun. I had a ton of good games. And my opponents in general were just gracious. The only one that was bothering me is, again, the draws within Flesh and Blood are losses, because I had a very tight and tense match against a Dorinthia where it was deterministic at the point that we were at in the game when the game ended, that they did not have a way to win, and I was going to win the game deterministically. But they chose to draw, which is their choice. And with a judge right there, you can't ask for concessions. You can't. I mean, bringing it up is almost like a giant no-no. So I didn't even do that. I didn't mention anything about being deterministic beforehand because you're not supposed to. Okay, fine. People make it's just okay. Well, let's go and move forward and call it good. But the player, it seemed, was under the impression that it's a draw. So, it's like Magic, where a draw in Magic isn't so bad. We're X1 and 1. We're towards the top. And I'm like, no, we just both died. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, that was effectively a double loss, because we will now get paired into the X2s. We will not get paired with X1s, like, unless it's a random pair up. And we just died. We're no longer live for top 8. And they were like, I thought, I didn't know it worked that way. And I'm like, great.
Well, you do now.
Yeah. And so I got sent from the top of that bracket of the tournament at that point in time was a couple of Kanos, which I would love to dodge. And then mostly it was like Bravos and Reinars, which are what I want. And then I got sent down to Iras and Kanos and things like that. And I was just like, oh, okay. So that one hurt quite a bit. I did have fun playing, though. I went 4-3-1, which, losing to an Ira and a Kano directly after that match was sort of backbreaking. The Kano killed me on turn 2. Like, I had no agency in the game. I had 4 blues in hand and AB3 and still died on the turn. They did 32. Like, okay, great. I lose. So there's that. But ultimately, like, I'm not mad about my results. I think that I probably wouldn't have finished X2, but playing Briar, you can run hot in the calling. And so I might have made day 2 and made a little bit of a run, but I would eventually run into some problematic things that we will discuss momentarily. Derek, how did you feel? What are your results like?
My results bring out mixed feelings in me. They were both good and bad. They were good considering the circumstances. I was very happy with my play. I only made one mistake, it felt like, all day, and the one mistake I made was inconsequential. But I was trying to keep track of stuff that I knew were obvious play mistakes, just so that I could, focus on improvement and whatever. I still feel good about my choice. I expected the field to have a lot of Briar, a lot of Fi, and a lot of Dromai, and so I played Bravo because I have what I feel like is good matchups into those. I think Briar is technically a neutral matchup because it's very draw dependent, and it's not dependent on my draws. It's dependent on my opponents. If they have very good channel mount heroics, then it's problematic. And if they have, normal channel mount heroics, then I feel really good about that matchup. Dromai and Fi, I'm not a boastful person, but like Fi is basically an auto win. I can't even remember the last time I lost to a Fi on Bravo. Dromai, if it's a very good Dromai player, then it can go the distance, but I feel very good into that. And turns out I was right, because when you look at the representation in the field, the 3 most played heroes at the Indianapolis Calling were Briar, Fi, and Dromai. Now the problem is that I played 7 rounds and I finished 4-3, and I played against 0 Dromais and I played against 0 Fis and only 2 Briars. So my overall experience was 2 Briars along with 2 Reinars, which is still winnable, but not the best for me because they can take away a lot of my blocking efficiency on Guardian, and sometimes my crush effects are not as impactful against them. For example, Chokeslam can shut down some of their package, but not all of it. The claws still get buffed by Blood Rush if they want to pop it, etc., etc. They tend to run, if it's the mid-rangey Reiner, a bit more D-reacts. In fact, the opponent that I played in round 2 was a Reinar that survived 3 dominated crippling crushes, a dominated pulverize, and 2 dominated spinals before I ended up finally killing them. But in order to do so that particular opponent, I said, okay, listen, if I go to 1 when they were attacking me, I will have enough cards in hand where I can pop my Crater Fist and dominate a Chokeslam, and then based on the board state and the number of cards I had seen from them, there was no way that they could stay alive by preventing the damage. So I basically said, if they have Reckless Swing, I die, and if they don't, I win.
It's called full presenting, folks.
Yep. Thankfully, they did not have Reckless Swing. So then we say GG, we bump fists, and out of curiosity, my opponent flips over the top card of their deck, and it's a Reckless Swing.
Never do that. So, never fucking do that.
Yeah. So that one was fun. But yeah, so I played, so I played against 2 Reinars, 2 Briars. I played against 2 of the very defensive dashes, which is my worst matchup. There were not many there. And like clockwork, whenever I have a bad matchup, I just seem to find them like a heat-seeking missile. And then the last opponent I played against was an Icelander who, some of you may have heard of him. I don't know. It's my good friend Caleb, aka Majin Bay. At that point in the day, I was 4-1 and he was 4-1. And I turned to him and I said, we're going to end up playing, right? And he was like, yeah, we're getting to that stage. And then they said over the loudspeaker, players, the pairings for round 6 are up. And we both look at our phone and I was like, son of and we got paired. So Icelander is just a bad matchup for me on Bravo to begin with. Caleb is an outstanding player. He made top 4. Yeah, I mean, he made top 4. I did feel good about my matchup into him. I started doing exactly what I needed to do in that matchup. I had back-to-back really strong, like Rouse the Ancients into second big attack. got him to around 20 very early. He even said after the match, he was like, I was very concerned because I was down so early. The problem is after that, I had a turn where I stumbled because I drew multiple reds and I couldn't keep the gas going. And then he was able to start getting chip damage in, as well as he developed an Insidious Chill. Because up until that point, he didn't have enough cards to develop, right, to start clawing back in. Then I think it was 1 or 2 turns after the Insidious Chill, I stumbled again. I drew a hand that had 3 reds. He did a good chunk of damage. The follow-up turn was 2 more reds. So I'd drawn, I don't know, it was like 80% of my reds at that point in the game already. And then he whittled me down and we got to where we were both kind of feeling like he was in a position to close it out. And then I drew another hand where I had 2 reds, and that was it. So like I said, it is what it is. I did what I was supposed to do in that matchup. If I don't have the 1 stumble turn, I think that I at least make it a lot more competitive. But my goal was to beat Dromize and Fies, and I saw 0 of them. So like, I know I should feel good because I kind of lost matchup roulette, but you're still disappointed. I don't think that had I made day 2, much like Logan was saying, that I would have made too deep of a run, just because when you look at both the matchups as well as just like the quality of players that were there in top 8, I think it would have been difficult. If I would have known about the field what I know now, I probably would have taken a different hero. But again, like, I don't feel bad about my choice because my assumption was correct. The 3 heroes I expected to see the most were the 3 most played. I just didn't run into them. So had I known, maybe I would have done something different. But that was my results. So 4 and 3. Unfortunate matchups for me, but I think I played really well, all things considered.
Yeah, sometimes it is what it is, right? There is a little bit of a matchup lottery aspect, or sometimes a lot of a matchup lottery aspect when it comes to this game. And you read the room. I think the part that you might have misread was how many of those got sent into the bracket you weren't in fairly quickly, because we all expected aggro to be better than it was. And it wasn't. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
We will get to that, but first we're gonna do a little bit of a 3-part question. The question here, and we'll both take some stabs at this, is a general question of how do you feel about Flesh and Blood right now? And we're gonna break it down 3 ways, because I think that this is important. We are at a really weird crux point with some frustrations with the game in general. So I kind of want to talk through that. So first off, we're going to address this. So how do you feel about Flesh and Blood competitively right now?
I think that the competitive side of Flesh and Blood is actually the weakest part about the game right now. Just like when I look at it holistically, great intellectual property, wonderful, memorable characters, and I know we're going to touch on the other stuff, but like, wonderful community, well designed. I love so much about it, but any complaints that I ever tend to have about the game come from something related to the competitive side. So like, for example, I'm a very big limited player. I love to draft. I love playing sealed. So one of my complaints frequently is that we don't have enough competitive events based on those formats. And I would have loved, for example, to have had some sort of like, high tier, decent competitive event to have played in this weekend, but I didn't. And they weren't even doing like on-demand drafts. So like, this is the first calling I didn't buy the big Fabled package, because normally my plan to go to any calling or any of these big events is like, I'll play in the main event, and then if I scrub out, I just play drafts all weekend long. Like, that's what I want to do. I love to play limited. So competitively, I just really wish that we had more support for the limited formats. I hold out hope that we'll get more of that going in the future, but right now, again, that would be one of my complaints. I also think that they are working on it, but they're still struggling to find that sweet spot for the number of events per year as far as competitive events go, right? We had that first year where we felt like we were having callings, once a month. And then we had a couple of pro tours. And then this year we're down to only one pro tour. But maybe we're going to get like more battle hardens. We still kind of don't know much about skirmish season. Road to Nats is always fun, but I don't know. I think that I would like more mid-tier events, especially like locally, but even just like one or two more like larger scale events, just because even if it's not me, like I know I can't make it to all of them because of my scheduling, but that is just something that I hear as a complaint from players. And then the other competitive issue is that they're, I think, still trying to find their sweet spot as far as how they want to handle like Living Legend, how they want to handle bans, what formats they want to support. And I think that they'll get there over time. I think part of the big frustration is that we are in that weird middle point because we are at a point in time where the flaws of their approach to Living Legend and bans, for example, right, are apparent. And so as a player base, we want answers now, but the things that they have instituted and implemented probably don't kick in for another 6 months or so because of the lead time on sets, right? So just as an example, right? Prism LLs, Chain LLs, people who are diehard fans of those heroes, they're stuck trying to go to something else, or maybe they just sell out of the game entirely. I know a couple of players that did that because they're like, hey, I'm a Prism main, and if I can't play her, then what's the point? Now, we know at some point we're going to get replacements for them, but we're in that weird middle ground. And I think that part of that is because when they designed the Living Legend format, they didn't really have a pulse for how fast heroes would potentially Living Legend. And now they've got more data points on that, whether it's extremely fast, like a Starvo, for example, or, ones that kind of chug along, whether that's the Chains, the Old Hymns, whatever. But I think that they just have more data now so they can plan their sets accordingly to accommodate. But that doesn't help us now. So we are just in that weird middle point. I truly, honestly think things will get better in that regard in the long run. But right now it feels bad. So like I said, for me, all of my complaints tend to be on the competitive side, and they're all things I hold out hope for. But I see the complaints. I think they're valid criticisms. And also, again, just give me more like rated limited events. Let me draft like once a month competitively. That's what I want.
That's the dream. I think that I think I agree. I mean, I know I agree with virtually everything you said. The thing I would add is we are in a couple of different weird spots. And we had a pretty lengthy discussion on this in an Airbnb at whatever fucking time it was. And it was, we're stuck right now. We're actually in Fab 1.5. Because we have the Fab 1.0 heroes running rampant, and we have Fab 2.0 being released. If you look at what the Living Legend format will look like, in short order, it's all heroes that are Living Legend right now and all heroes that are close to being Living Legend right now are all talented. Every single one. Chain, Shadow. Prism, Light. Starvo, fucking all of them. And then the two ice heroes are now kind of close. They're both about 350 points away. The two ice heroes that matter are that close.
More talents means more power.
Yes, more talents means bigger card pool and more power. Weird. And I understand the Icelander superpower is Michael Hamilton. I get that. And he's responsible for something absurd like 40% of her Living Legend points or something even higher. It's actually mind-boggling how much he is personally responsible for her being that close. But
he's gonna Living Legend at this rate.
He might LL himself. I don't know what that looks like, but his Make-A-Wish schedule will fill up, though.
Michael Hamilton is the first time in trading card game history that I have felt like we need to have drug testing for performance enhancing drugs. That's all I'm going to say. I'm pretty sure he's on the roids.
You think he's on the roids? You think?
Yeah, I don't think he has the home run record if it's not for the roids. That's what I'm saying.
I think that.
Sorry, I was trying to bring some baseball in because I saw Jordan this weekend and I missed him. So I was like, all right, we'll do the baseball.
Absolutely, we're trying to get him in there. it is kind of a weird feeling. And if Michael and and Roger, which we just affectionately refer to as Michael's butler, are listening, we're it's not that I want him to living legend. I want him to be put out to pasture and in a good home and not a glue factory. I would like him to be paid a wage to design the game so that we don't have to deal with the shit that sometimes we have to deal with now that he just keeps breaking. So
Yeah.
that'd be nice. Just pay him a commiserate wage that would be equal to his winnings, which right now are like over $200,000 in a year and a half of Flesh and Blood competitive events, which is just dumb. Like, okay, fine. So competitively speaking, we're stuck because we're in extremes. You should be playing either hard control on one end or hard aggro on the other end, and there's only really one mid-range deck that is any good, and that's Iyslander. Now we had that discussion about, is Iyslander a mid-range deck, and I think that you and I were on the same wavelength of like, it is. It's the only actual competitive mid-range deck.
I don't want to call other people out, but it was posited by some of my compatriots that there were no mid-range decks, that everything was hyper aggro or hyper control right now. And I said, actually, I think Iyslander actually is like the perfect mid-range deck as far as the current iteration of Flesh and Blood, because you make all your decisions based on flow of the game and you try to take the best value you can. And it has a wide range of play patterns, right? Like you can be aggressive, you can revert to control, you can try to set up a combo with pitch stacking. Like, I think that it's versatile and it has several different game plans and it's adaptable. So like, I personally would consider Iyslander right now a mid-range. Now I just hate that term in general when it comes to Flesh and Blood, because I don't think that it applies the same way. Flesh and Blood is just a completely different game, and we're trying to use terminology from other games. I tend to think about proactive, reactive, and adaptive. Right, those are the way that I think of Flesh and Blood. There's 3 modes, right? Do I want to block more often, attack more often, or is it going to be based on context, right? So I think that she would fall into that adaptive category, and that's why I think of her as like the closest thing to mid-range.
Yeah, and again, I think we've got changes incoming. I'm not ready to sit here and say the sky is falling, but it's pretty obvious that there is a definitive best thing to be doing right now, or it feels like there is a definitive best thing to be doing right now as far as how hard you turn in one direction or the other. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It feels, especially in a game where identity is wrapped into the hero you play. Because if you feel like the thing you identify with is unplayable, you're not going to play. And instead of like in Magic or other card games where, okay, well, I can't play red right now, but there is a good mono green deck that does some of the similar things that I like to do, or something along those lines. And I feel like that's where we're stuck at competitively, is we're kind of just waiting for 1.0 to kind of be done with, and we get to finally see what the future really is for this game. And as a game, going on to the second bullet point here is how we feel about it as a game. I think the engine is still great. I have zero qualms about the engine. I think that the game is great. The lore is great. The again, identifying with characters and having mains, having people who are hard simps for illusionists. You know who you are. Don't act like you don't. Mara, we're looking at you. And and stuff like that. Like we have those people in our community, and it's great. And it's great that they have something that they latch onto like that. And I think that that's a positive for the game. I honestly don't think that there's a problem with the game. There's a problem with the timeline we're at in the game. And that's where I'm seeing most of the issues right now. What do you think about that?
I mean, I love the game. So I kind of said that a little bit early, right, in my last answer. So like, I don't want to beat on the horse too much, but like, I think that the game is incredibly well designed, and there's still a lot of potential room for growth. I think that right now we're just going through that weird spot where you have the very early phases of a game where you are just like having stuff try to catch on, but you're also very slowly trying to reveal like these are all the different ways that we can approach things, right? You don't want to go too hard into the depth early. You want to leave a lot in the tank so that you can iterate over years and years. And so you have that very early like honeymoon phase, and then you get the first part where you're like, okay, now we're going to finally dive into the depth and try a few wacky things. And sometimes that goes really well, and sometimes things
Urza's block. Oh,
you
sorry.
know, well, no, it's it's funny you say that because Brian, so we were having some conversations. I don't think he's going to be upset if I share this, but Brian actually used that exact same analogy in a conversation we had, where he said, sometimes you have to print a Mercadian masks after an Urza's block to get things back on track, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think that's where we are with Flesh and Blood. I think that when we look back, we're going to say, okay, the parts of Monarch that were really good, and the parts of Aria that were really good, and that was part of that learning experience of, how do we do cool, new, interesting, interactive things, but without necessarily like crushing the power level. And then what was it that folks felt was fair? What did people like? What did people not like? And then how do we build on the right foundation? And so I think that, like I said, I think that they have a good feel for that. And it can be very hard to give them that level of faith because we don't see it right now. But you have to remember, like, the stuff that they're working on is already months and months down the road. So,
Right.
6 months from now, a year from now is the stuff that, would be put into place as a reaction to the stuff we're seeing now. So I try just to not be overly judgmental in the moment. Like I don't think that we as a community, I'll put it this way, I don't think that we as a community are telling LSS anything that they are not aware of themselves.
Yeah, and I kind of scaled this the way I did when I wrote these out, because the last thing I want to talk about is how we feel about Flesh and Blood as a community. And I don't think any of this is a secret, how we feel about Flesh and Blood as a community. It's still, right now, the best large gaming community I've ever been a part of.
It's top tier, A+, outstanding. Every event feels like a party, but not just like, oh, we're going to go have a wild good time. I mean, like, it's more like a family reunion style party
every time,
right?
Yep, it's all
not
feels
like
family.
It's not spring break summer bender party. It is family reunion. It can be, but that's like part of that family reunion. You get together with your cousins and you get a little drunk and you go sledding at midnight or whatever, but it's still, don't judge me.
No, I'm not judging. I'm into it. Like, that sounds great.
It's still like that vibe. It's just, hey, how have you been? How are the kids? What have you been up to? Hugs all around, great food. It's just that wonderful vibe. Everybody's, accepting, and
yeah,
I love it. It has restored a lot of my faith in gaming, and it definitely, for this year, it restored my desire to play more physical in-person games, because don't get me wrong, I love all card games and I love my digital card games, but you just really do miss some of that interaction when your opponents are just a username as you grind games, as opposed to the people you meet and you shake their hand and you say GG, and then you chat a few rounds later and you see him at the next event, right? Like, it's wildly different.
Yeah, when I stop and think about this, like, when I really drill into this, and just the sheer number of people that I just had a dinner with, there were 10 people staying in our Airbnb, of which one of them I didn't know, and now I feel like we're best fucking friends. Blevy, that one's for you if you're listening, buddy. And so I had dinner with everybody in that Airbnb, and then you add in the other people, the Kennedys. You have Maylin, which May listens to the show, and she's going to give me shit about that. And Tommy Dong, because at Cheech and Dong, because we had Gary at one point too, I'm pretty sure. Which that's who you guys are now. You're just Cheech and Dong. A friend of Jordan's that I think I'd met once. I believe his name was Doug. Really cool guy, and he came out to dinner with us too. We had just an extra spot, and so a guy I didn't know, but I'd barely kind of just met in passing at the Realm booth. I was like, "Hey, we're going to dinner. You want to come with?" He's just like, "Bro, can I?" Like, "Yeah, let's fucking go." Like, why not? Like, why wouldn't you? So and then Carolina and her friend Ashley, who I just met, did not know her until the day before. And we're all just out doing these things together because that's the way the community is. It's like, you want to come along? Come on, let's go. Like, zero qualms. The door's always open. It feels like it's just the most welcoming thing. And I've never been a part of that. I was driving back today with pimping my guest, Dag and White, like normal. And we were having that conversation. I know I've talked about it here too, where when I played Magic on a continual basis, I did not have the con blues afterwards. Like, I would leave events, I'd want to go home. I'd want to get home. And leaving Indianapolis, I'm like, fuck, why couldn't we just like get 2 more days out of this? Like, squeeze just like 2 more days of shenanigans. Like, why we had 10 people in our Airbnb on couches watching fucking True Lies last night. And it was the best thing ever because a bunch of people hadn't seen it, and that movie's absurd. I know Flake is somewhere going, "You're fired," and it's beautiful. And everybody's laughing and having a good time and just hanging out. We fired a Tales of Aria first ed draft last night because we could, sitting around a table. So we just had. It's such a cool community because everybody just isn't trying to like push anybody out. It's all like, we're going to welcome you as long as you are just not a shitty person. That's the barrier of entry is super fucking low. To just be a part of everything that's going on, and I can't get over how cool that is, and I can't get over how much I fucking hate leaving it. It just like, again, it's like, can we just make these all week-long vacations or 2-week-long vacation, something, so we can spend more time around each other, because it's always awesome when we get to.
Yeah. Now you're making me sad.
I mean, I'm hyped and sad because...
Just kidding. I was already sad.
You can't fool me, you sad son of a bitch. Why not? But yeah, I'm going to be mushy about you fuckers because you do make this better. You make all of this better. You make all of this worth doing. And even when I'm frustrated with the game competitively, which I enjoy winning. I enjoy playing the game. I enjoy winning. I'm not good at it. I don't have the time to dump into it that some people do. Also, my brain is smoothed over quite a bit in my 40s. I'm sure the booze doesn't help. So, and I understand I'm never going to be a top tier player at this game, but if I can be a top tier community member, I will take that. And the crazy part is, being a top tier community member in this community is as hard as being a top tier competitor because of so many top tier community people in this game. So it's still crazy. It's still fun. It's still kind of and we're not trying to one up each other either. We're just trying to lift each other. And we all do each other's fucking shows. Like, there's no competition. We're all just in it together, and it's great. But now we got to talk about other things.
Yeah, now we have to talk about the top 8.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we're used to seeing like a 6 or 7 hero top 8. So this one kind of hits different because it's 5 Oldhim, 2 Icelander, and Tarek 2 belts trying to hold down the fort with Briar.
But worth noting, as you were saying earlier, all talented, and specifically all elemental talents. Like, this is the strength of, Aria, and then, Icelander kind of came in Everfest and then got fleshed out, obviously, in Uprising. But like, this is those elements, right? This is ice baby with a little bit of earth thrown in through the entire thing.
Right. It doesn't feel good to look at. Let me really, really, really preface this, because the lens that you have to look at this through is top level competition. These are people that spend a ton of time with this game. Even Majin Bay is not, even though he has Runeterra shit to do too, which he's still incredible at. Shouts out to Majin. Shouts out to Caleb. Like, just good work by you, buddy.
Yeah, I love everything he did all weekend long, except for round 6 of the calling, specifically for no reason.
or the couple of things here is, one, asking if it was reasonable for him to concede in the semifinals so he can make it to dinner. And 2, taking your phone to call me to ask if we still had room at dinner after he lost in the semifinals. Those are the other problematic parts, because no, you shouldn't concede. And sadly, no, at a very difficult to get a 10 person reservation at a steakhouse, I could not quite fit another one. Would have loved to, though. That'd have been great. But when you're looking at the spread, you are looking at top tier players. You are looking at people who are trying to optimize their chances of winning and nothing else. I don't know if I want to believe that Charles Dunn is as big a sadist as it comes off as when he's playing his version of Oldhim, but I can't imagine it being fun. I've played against it. I think in the first time that he busted it out competitively, I think I was the first victim, and it's not fun to play against, but it will win eventually.
I bet he actually did have fun playing it.
He
Charles
will not
is
be
a long time Oldhim player, though, and I think that anytime he gets to take and innovate on a hero that he enjoys, I bet he
might have.
I bet he enjoyed it at least a little bit. There's something special about being at like 53 life.
Yeah, 52, 53 before he starts attacking. Yeah, because there's 6 attacks in the deck total.
Yeah.
And then with the Icelanders winning, I mean, that's kind of expected to a degree, especially when one of them is Michael Hamilton. But it's going to scare people when they see 5 Oldhim, 2 Icelander, 1 Briar, and it's going to be easy to say the sky is falling for competitive Flesh and Blood, and I don't think that's true. Couple of reasons. One, again, these are people optimizing. They've had time to get these, because we've seen what we had Dynasty to add a few very small wrinkles, so supplemental set, and then we had and then bannings, which we'll get to, and had their impact, and Worlds, but from the Worlds lists, and so they've had a ton of time to just keep innovating and iterating to find the thing that was going to give them the best chance to win, and that's what they're going to play. They're not going to, and I'm not saying they should either, but there's no consideration for, is this fun to play against? The consideration is, what gives me the best chance to win games of Flesh and Blood, because there is a non-zero amount of money on the line. And this isn't, your armories aren't probably going to look like this unless you're at Hairy Tarantula. Your armories are probably going to look like this if you're at Hairy Tarantula. But God, no, hashtag no free ads though. And the problem I see here is, I kind of feel like the banned and restricted, or banned and suspended announcement actually made these decks better instead of hurting them.
Yeah, see, I will contest this. I don't think there's a world where you can argue that Oldhim is somehow better without Winter's Wail. I will say that it just meant that the decks are different. But I don't know that you could ever argue that it, you could take every deck that was played this weekend and say to any of them, like, would you rather run Winter's Wail? And they would all say yes, right? Like that deck is not better because of Winter's Wail being gone. The argument could maybe be made that other decks got worse at a greater rate, meaning like the loss of Belittle could have been far more significant for the aggro players because it was bailing many of them out for a long time. I'm very much of the idea that Belittle was far more powerful than it ever looked, because it was like an attack with a Dark Ritual built in.
Right.
And so I think that loss is probably more than anything showing up in those results more so. But I don't think that I would say like those decks, the decks didn't get better. I think that players that did well on them, I think that the reasons that the Oldhim did well was because consistency was taken away from the other decks, and the only thing that happened to Oldhim was that you just don't like win faster. Like the same reasons that Oldhim was winning before are the same reasons I think that he was winning this time, right? He still has an insane amount of value, and it's not like you couldn't fatigue on Oldhim before. I think the only thing that happened is like people went, okay, I can't be as offensive as I used to be, so I'm just going to put in the reps so that I don't lose to time. Because honestly, that was a consideration I had made. I still felt like Oldhim was an incredibly strong deck. I just didn't trust myself to finish games, especially when it's going to fatigue, within the time limit of Swiss, which is why I ultimately settled on Bravo. But all of the players, like to me, the most impressive thing when I think about it from the weekend is like Charles Dunn did what he did and never went to time. Like that's what blows my mind, right? This is somebody with 6 attacks in his deck, was going up to like 50 plus health, was running so many things, and then like also never had a draw. So to me, that just says, okay, they just put in the reps and honed it, but I don't know that it made the decks better.
So I think that what I meant was the loss of Winter's Wail caused an iterative response to happen that created a deck that was going to win more, and it pushed it further to an extreme. And because it no longer is leaning on this 3-for-4 breakpoint at all points in time that's going to work every time, and instead is going into this other extreme, which has a higher winning percentage. The thing I compared it to, for any Magic players out there, was when there was Hogak with Bridge from Below. And so the decision was made to remove Bridge from Below, and the next iteration of the deck was just a higher extreme and more consistent. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm seeing with some of these decks that are just pushing further and further and further to the hard control element. And that's kind of how I was looking, the lens I was looking through.
Sure. No, I mean, I could see that. I think also specifically, like when I'm thinking about things, right? Like my brain's going faster than my mouth, so I need to take a moment here. I would actually argue that it wasn't the decks that necessarily got better. I'm going to say that the loss and the bans made the players better. They were no longer able to lean on something that was just like inherently powerful as a crutch, but they still recognized that they were more than capable of winning in other ways. And so they just went all in on the other game plan, right? And sure. I think that Flesh and Blood is beginning to show itself as a game where there is not a lot of impactful variance. I actually think that there's still a fair amount of variance in the game. We like to say it's low variance. I actually don't think it's low variance. I think that it's low variance impact. And so the folks who can navigate that and who can put in the reps and who can showcase their skill really do skill gap. I know that's something that like we like to say as a joke or whatever, but it's the truth. They skill gap their opponents. There's a reason Michael Hamilton keeps winning, and it's not because he's drawing better than everybody. It's because he's just much, much better at navigating all of the different moments throughout the course of a game and minimizing the impact of the variance, right? So I just think that the bans and the restrictions and whatever pushed players that were already good to be better, and then it showed as a result. And that's why it feels so oppressive, because it's not even just like, oh, it's Oldhim, but like when I look at that top eight was like actually really impressive.
Stacked.
I mean, it was a stacked top eight. Like there's a reason it was those players. And so I am of the belief that the people who doubled down and went, all right, if these are, the bans, this is what I have to work with, then I'll do it. And they were rewarded for it.
Hey, question really quick for you, kind of a personal nature. What's it like to have your brain run faster than your mouth? Because I've never fucking experienced that a single time in my life.
It's very frustrating because what happens is that I'll either have what I'm doing right now, where I have to purposefully pause and slow down my speech in order for my mouth to catch up, or I slur my words. I also have the problem when I'm reading. So like when I was a child, I used to dread reading out loud, but it wasn't because I was nervous in front of other children. It was because my eyes went faster than my mouth. So I would read sentences, but like incoherently in chunks because I'd jump ahead and then the people in the class couldn't follow me. And this is something that I got slightly better at when I started teaching. So like when I was an adjunct professor for a local university here, it's helped. And it's certainly something that was kind of a problem for me when I try to do the casting thing and my brain gets really hyped up and excited and then I just run with it. But it is frustrating at times, I'm not going to lie. And I don't know how else to describe it. It makes me, I think, sometimes come off as like a weird Christopher Walken-esque person because I'll have pauses in places that don't make sense. That's because I'm trying to get my mouth and my brain to resync, right? It's almost like when you see a video and an audio and things are slightly off and it's frustrating for you as a viewer. That's me with my brain in my mouth half the time. And so I have to stop so that my brain buffers back to my mouth and then they get back on track.
I mean, I have no inner monologue, so I just fucking talk. Like, that's just what I do. It just all comes out.
Yeah, and I envy that because I can't imagine when you're not talking, like what that just peaceful emptiness would be like.
It's not peaceful. It's still chaos. So, okay. Nope.
That raging emptiness.
Yeah, it's like there's a cacophony of people just smashing cowbells into themselves over and over and over again. And then eventually words will then filter through the clanging of the clashing of the cowbells, and they come directly out of my mouth with zero concern about what those words are and who they may or may not offend and how they actually work in context with the conversation. And sometimes sometimes you wind up with things that are super out of pocket and you later have to apologize, but it is what it is. I can't really turn it off. And
so you're the reason that Einfeld got canceled.
I am not the reason that no. The reason Einfeld got canceled is because it went and looked at J.K. Rowling's Twitter profile and used that as a way to build the episode out, which you should never do.
Yeah, that sounds bad. Don't do that.
Don't do that. The last piece of this is, and I think that we're both on the same page here, but I am curious to hear your fully fleshed out thoughts as you think about things in a way much differently than I do. Does something need done ahead of Outsiders?
I don't think so. And my reason is twofold. First, I don't think that you need to make hard knee-jerk reactions after one event. There's not enough data there, right? It's entirely possible aggro could be fine, and maybe there was just a string of bad days. Could be that, some of the better aggro players just decided to shift to Oldhim. Like, there's just so many factors there that just like one event is not, I think, enough to justify any sort of knee-jerk reaction. And so with that in mind, even if you say, okay, we're going to wait for, a few more battle hardens or, another calling, blah, blah, blah. By the time you do get those data points, Outsiders is going to be out. So right. I don't think anything needs to be done ahead of time. And then also once Outsiders does release, even if you suspect it to be a lower powered set, like let's just say LSS is, back at the office and they're like, hey, we know that this is purposefully supposed to be a little bit lower powered. I think that you still don't necessarily need to change anything because one, you've got your living legend policy. So you just have to let it run its course. And then your lower powered stuff now becomes the new baseline. Because at some point that's what needs to happen, right? Either you just continue to print broken stuff and all of your quote unquote, Fab 1.0 heroes never catch up, or you continue to print new stuff closer to 1.0 levels and you let your Aria and Monarch stuff that were a problem kind of run their course. And then when you reprint those heroes later, you realign them to the appropriate power level, right? One of those two things has to happen. And I suspect it's going to be that they let the wild, crazy overpowered stuff just kind of run their course and then they rein things in. But in either scenario, I don't think that you do anything pre-Outsiders, and you don't want to do it even at the release of Outsiders, because you're introducing new variables to a closed system at that point. So I think the actual answer is you let Outsiders release, and then you also just shift your focus to a bunch of limited events for a while, because I'm not at all biased.
Not at all.
And then you don't have to worry about banning things for CC, because everybody's drafting anyway.
Yeah, it's great. Brian's getting a lot of fucking run on this show this week, by the way. So if Gottlieb, if you're listening, you're getting a lot of credit on these, buddy. Because he has been viciously and voraciously retweeting out the blurb in the article he wrote about Crown of Seeds is a necessary part of the Outsiders meta. So I'm more convinced now than I was previously, even though I was pretty convinced that the Belittle ban was actually preemptive to Outsiders. And I thought the clues in the article were there to tell us that. And with the retweeting out of the image of that specific blurb over and over and over again, it's really drilling into my head that there's some go wide shit in Outsiders that is going to start putting the pressure back on some of these heroes that are trying to run these fatigue strategies, and maybe some forms or fashions of recursion or unblockable attacks or similar to not being able to block as efficiently, things like that.
I think that, just even jumping ahead, I know that we don't have it on our agenda for
I do shitty show notes, fucking sue me.
Oh no, I'm just saying I know we don't have it on our agenda for this week, but I think that there's even more proof in some of the new spoilers that were leaked. So now that we know what frailty tokens do, for example, that also lends itself to being an anti-go wide tech. And if they're introducing that within the set, then it's also supposed to be a counter within, draft and within the set. And knowing we have a Katsu, knowing we have a Benji, not knowing quite yet what our new assassins and new rangers are going to do, but let's be honest, like one of the assassins is literally called Switchblade. I'm going to guess she's probably doing things quick and going wide and
stabby.
So between those clues, the frailty token, and then the other reason that I think that Crown of Seeds might have a quote unquote place as well is just because it's a damage bubble. And so knowing now what the other token does, right, Blood Rot Pox, I'm kind of looking forward to potentially playing like a poison archetype, where you're just loading people up with Pox tokens and then letting that damage trigger. But yeah, I think that Brian is he's getting the benefit of the doubt, and
a lot.
We're leaning on you, Brian. Don't make us
don't let us down here. Don't make us look stupid. Like, please don't.
Love you, Brian.
Yeah, like I don't make us look like assholes. I mean, I look like an asshole enough on my own. I don't need help.
I do. Yeah, I was gonna say I do enough on my own. I don't need your help, Brian.
I don't need help. We're gonna try to fast forward through a little bit of this stuff because we are now an hour in. So you were right. You were right.
I knew
it was dense. It's a dense week. I get it. Michael Hamilton wins on Icelander over Charles Dunn and Oldham. No one is shocked about the results whenever Michael Hamilton wins. The shocking part is the man has never lost a calling that he's entered. That's just kind of how the fuck? At any rate, the Battle Hardened was won by Pete Budensic of Goliath Gauntlet fame, playing Kano, which is kind of cool. Because now we're going to go back to a meatier topic again, which is the performance of Star City Games at the event. Okay. I've already gone over the top 64 versus X2 fiasco earlier when I was discussing, how I dropped from the calling because I thought I was no longer viable in the calling, as it were. And so I dropped after round 4. Roger Bodie was kind enough to kill me, and or I was kind enough not to kill him in front of his child, however way you want to take that. And we had the discussion right there. I'm like, well, that ends my day. And he's like, yeah, whoever lost this was out. He's like, so yeah, we'll just it's gonna be funny because SUG is gonna have 2 podcasts bitching about their decisions, and I'm like, big facts. So shout out to the MNR podcast for also bitching about this at some point in time on their next show. But and I'm going to give some credit to Star City, specifically to Ward, who is wonderful as a TO. He tries to make things right. Good guy. Very reasonable human. I walked up, described the situation, and he compensated me for my battle hardened and said, and got me into that. So it's not like I was out anything, but I had to go up and say something for that to happen. That's not great. However, I did go up and say something, and it was taken care of. Then the next day, the prize structure listed for the battle hardened and was that 3 wins began where the prizes began. That was how it was listed. And then later, after like round 2, they posted that now it's just the top 24, which would require like 6 wins to get anything beyond, to get any sort of prizing. So it's like, you can't do this shit. And at that point in time, I was just too mentally exhausted to just run it back and do it again. I have no doubt that if I would have had the mental energy or anything else to go up and have the conversation a second time, that it would have been taken care of. Like, something would have been done. They would have honored the original prizing for me, right? Because I said something, but they had no intention of honoring it. They wouldn't of honoring it full stop, because otherwise they wouldn't have changed it.
Right.
And that's, again, these are things that you just can't do. Like, you can't keep changing the rules on the fly. There were a large number of like Magic-esque numbers of reports of negative interactions with players and judges, and even players with judge interactions that were I'm going to say that they were unnecessarily tense. And then on top of all of this is just the choppy way that it felt like the events were all running in general.
You mean the calling's not supposed to show up as an on-demand event in Gem?
Yeah, it really isn't. It's supposed to show up as a rated event. However, and this is me. I'm going on a rant now. I've done this one before, but I'm doing it again. Fuck MTG Melee. It is the dumbest fucking thing to use for a fab event. You don't fucking need it. The Gem does all of the fucking work. You don't need this stupid fucking thing to tell you anything, because it's all on a different website. So you're paying juice to MTG Melee for literally no reason whatsoever as a player. It may be a convenience to Star City, but why the fuck is my entry fee going up to pay for their convenience? Why am I paying $8 or $9 on top of my $150, which I know is a pittance, sir? But why the fuck is that coming out of my pocket to make your lives easier when we're not going to use this piece of shit system that doesn't work half the time in the first fucking place for what it was designed to work for, to run these stupid events, to run these events? This makes no sense whatsoever. So they had all these people signing up in Melee with 3 different packages that got you into the calling, and they all showed up on separate lists. Weird. No way to collate those, huh? Where does that problem come from, baby? Melee? Shocking. So now you had people get into this fuck off long line to then say, I'm actually in this event, please add me. But they couldn't add it to the actual calling setup, so they had to set up a fucking on-demand event to make it work. Like, which is a solution, but it's a solution to a problem that shouldn't have existed in the first goddamn place.
Also, not to beat a dead horse here, but since we are talking about issues at the event, something else that I don't think was made as big of a deal as it should have been, and to their credit, LSS, I believe, has already sent something out to judges about it, correcting the issue, but this calling was operated with the top 8 being closed deck lists. Opponents did not get to see
bullshit.
Which is not something that has been the policy in the past, and according to the email sent out, is also not supposed to be the policy in the future. But this top 8 also was operating under closed deck lists, so you can just again, add that to the list of issues. And look, I get it. No event runs smoothly. I've said it several times that there's no broadcast that goes smoothly. There's no event that goes smoothly. There's always going to be issues. It is how you address the issues that makes or breaks things. And this one just felt like there were large numbers of issues with not like the greatest responses, when they popped up.
No, that understatement. It was, to call it a shit show would be insulting shit shows. And I have to believe that there will be improvements coming soon to a theater near you. If not, it's going to be really hard for me to want to go. Like I may look at an event that I'm thinking about traveling for, and if it says I have to register through MTG Melee, I just might not go. Or if I go, I might not just play in your event. Like, I don't want to deal with it. And that is a Star City thing. CFB ran pretty smooth. They fucked up a couple of things. They fucked up a few times, but nothing at this magnitude in one event that I can think of. The biggest thing that they had was people not being able to enter the calling in New Jersey because, they capped it and didn't really announce that they were capping it, but they did say pre-registrations are open. Like, people could have just done that. That's what I did. And they left seats open for people that were playing in the Pro Tour that wanted to play the calling. I get that too. That makes sense to me. But I just don't feel like SCG used to be the gold standard when it came to running these things. Well, not the gold standard. Nothing's been the gold standard since Legion stopped running events. Steve Port was the single best person at doing this in the history of doing this. And he works for CFB sometimes. So again, reasons to hire CFB, but they were at least a high tier event organizer, better than other things that were out there. But much like their content creation side, much less a lot of things, it's just kind of gone to the wayside. And it doesn't feel like they have their shit together anymore the way they used to. Certain people do. Individuals know what they're doing, but the entire staffing and the entire running of events seems to has started to fade from them quite a bit. And I don't know if that's a people issue as far as being able to hire the people that know what they're doing. And that's, again, I'm not intending to insult anyone in particular. My interactions across the weekend with judges outside of the people that gave me wrong information were all fine, positive or neutral. There were no negatives. However, I also was next to or adjacent to some of the negative reactions and interactions and got to see them. Wasn't great. So yeah, like, something needs done to make these events better for the players, and it probably should happen quickly. That's my 2 cents. Well, about 17
outsiders.
cents.
That is something that needs to be done by outsiders.
Yeah, that would be great. If I didn't have to deal with all this fucking nonsense the next time I go to an event that is a larger event like a calling or Pro Tour, that'd be fantastic. So we're looking at what, April? God, that was exhausting. All right. You got anything else on that, or can I move on?
We should probably move on.
Should probably move on. Yeah.
Before you say something out of pocket.
Again. Right. Again. Still. Whatever. I think I've exceeded my fuck quota for this show, and I haven't. And
some of us are still trying to get hired by people. So.
Oh, right. Yeah, I forget that this sometimes adversely affects you, but hopefully. Hopefully it isn't too bad. Okay. We'll just give a quick shout to the ProQuest 3 metagame. Again, stop me if you've heard this. Top 4 played heroes: Fi, Dromai, Oldhim, Iyslander. Top 4 conversion rates: Fi, Oldhim, Iyslander, Dromai. Winning conversion: Fi, Oldhim, Iyslander.
Keep in mind this was for the third week, so
pre-ban.
This was pre-ban.
Yeah. And then the worst part of all of this is Briar ended at 964 living legend points and did not win the calling. So Breyer will be here for Pro Tour 3 in Baltimore, and everyone is excited for that. I don't know, like honestly, I don't know when Breyer goes away now. It would need to spike a Battle Hardened, right?
Listen, Breyer will living legend if Michael Hamilton catches
Picks it
the
up.
flu
Or picks up Breyer
and can't make an event. And then
Yeah.
Tarek Two Belts just runs it.
Yeah, that's possible. Although Tarek lost to Majin Bey and never saw Michael Hamilton, so
hey, this might be the first time in my professional card playing career that I have something in common with Tarek.
You lost to Majin Bey
at the same event, no less.
Yeah, you both lost to Caleb. Sure. I know that we talked about this last time, and we're not quite there yet. But our first giveaway of the year will be a Speakeasy ticket for the Chicago Brawl weekend. That contest will be announced on Twitter next week, ahead of or behind our Tuesday episode. So we will announce the details on the Tuesday episode, and then or on next week's episode, which will be episode 63. And the details on how to enter will be on Twitter. If you do not have a Twitter account, you can email us at fleshandpod@gmail.com, and I will consider. You must write a soliloquy that is reminiscent of "Love Be a Vulture Tonight" from Spider-Man. At which point I will then read it and consider your requests. If you write a simple sentence of "Hello, I would like to be entered," that's not good enough. I need you to fawn over us. I need you to write about how Charmer's chiseled jaw would make the Renaissance masters paint with a flurry at which that speed has never been attained by humans prior. That's what I need, because he is a specimen. That was that too much?
An unforgettable specimen.
Absolutely unforgettable. No one's ever forgotten your face. Not once.
Never been confused for anyone ever.
Anyone else. Nope. Has not happened. Although you kind of look like the guy on A. Einfeld.
A little bit.
A little bit.
In my youth, when I shaved a bunch more, people used to tell me I looked like David Arquette.
Kinda. Like that's
especially around what was it, like the Ready to Rumble?
The Rumble
era?
age, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that until now, mainly because I forget what David Arquette looks like. So I guess that's starting to explain a lot. I guess, I mean, it is what it is. Also, everybody, proud fappers of Fapland, this is getting too far already. The merch store is live. The link is in the show notes. The link will also be in our Discord. I'll be posting it as soon as I get the episode edited and up. So you can click in there, and the products and offerings will be changing on a regular basis. So keep browsing away, and I will try to announce whenever we have new offerings out there. I don't know how else to say that, but it's being done with our friends at Very Good Embroidery. And so yeah, you'll have all kinds of stuff to look for in there and look forward to in the future. And hats off to Jeffo for doing great work and getting these set up for us. I appreciate everything you do. You are loved on this side of the aisle for sure. We have one single listener question this week, and of course it's a doozy that is kind of long. From Keith of Keith's K's fame. If the Heroes of Wraith made a Super Friends type organization, who would be in there and who would be the leader? We're going to start with that one. Bravo, right?
Close. I can write a dissertation on this question, sir.
Ah, shit. All right. Well,
I know that's what you wanted to hear when we're already running over, but
yeah, there's no over. We don't have time limits here. We will go as long as we need to answer the fucking question.
So it's Starvo because he's Superman. Bravo is actually Bizarro, the villain.
He's not,
because he's the lamer version of the same guy.
But Bizarro's not lame Superman. He's reverse Superman.
Sure, but Bravo's like the most, card-wise, untalented, maybe most vanilla hero in Welcome to Wrath, right? No cool discard mechanics, no cool I attack with my weapons, no, he's just like I attack,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, Starvo is very clearly Superman because he just has all the powers. He's just busted.
Sure.
So
okay, so I've got I'll give you Starvo. I think the Bravo Starvo, whatever. It's Superboy, Superman. I think that then you have Dorinthia filling the Wonder Woman role.
I do.
Dash filling the Flash role.
Close, but no, I have Phi as Flash. Dash is who I have as, technically I have her listed as just Lantern Corps because she's not truly one of the Green Lanterns, but because she is the inventor extraordinaire, she can conjure to existence anything in her mind, much like a Green Lantern can. Whereas Phi is just blazing fast.
And then Katsu is Batman.
Katsu is Batman.
Okay.
Especially because he's trying to like track things down, like his lore matches.
Detective matches up. Yeah. I mean, Batman might as well be a Kurosawa film anyway.
Bolton is my Aquaman.
Because he kind of sucks?
Because in theory, he should be really powerful, but in practice, he's not.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Who are we missing from Martian Manhunter? Do we have one?
I didn't have one for this, so I threw in a couple of honorable mentions that are like sometimes included on the roster. So I have Azalea is the Green Arrow, and Prism is Zatanna.
I was wondering if we're gonna get a Zatanna.
Yeah,
because
Prism's, I mean, you know, perfect illusionist, magic.
Okay.
Waifu, the whole thing, right?
Jesus. Okay. Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, that started going downhill really fast. And then the Wonder Twins are like Benji and Valda. I don't know.
No, actually, I have Volda as one of the members of the Legion of Doom.
You have Valda and Legion of Doom. Okay.
Yeah, I have her as Giganta.
Interesting. Okay, so going over Legion of Doom, I'm gonna start in. So who's your Luthor?
The Emperor.
Okay, that makes sense.
Rich angry guy.
Yeah, rich angry guy seems great. Who's your Sinestro?
I didn't have a good choice for Sinestro. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be Kano, but there's not a good fit for Sinestro in my mind. I mean, maybe the merchant, what's his name? Like K Dwin or
Cavdeen?
Cavdeen, yeah. Maybe him, but
I kind of feel like it might be Viscerai, but
well, I had Viscerai as my Black Manta. Like emo guy in a mask.
No, I think that Black Manta has to be equally lame with Aquaman.
Viscerai? Like the worst of the Rune Blades, no respect.
No, well, I guess there is that. He is the worst of the Rune Blades. That much is true. Yeah, I guess. Do you conclude the Joker in your Legion of Doom or no?
I didn't hear.
Okay.
So I was also trying to keep like the rosters the same length, so that was part of the reason that I.
And you don't have Cheetah because you have Giganta, right?
Right. I had to make that.
You have to make a call.
Concession.
It's a call. Are you so like which Flash rogue did you take?
Oldhim is Captain Cold.
Okay, that's a little too easy. I thought he might be Gorilla Grodd.
My Gorilla Grodd is Reiner.
Yeah, okay.
And technically I have a second Flash rogue because I also it's gender bending, but I have Icelander as Weather Wizard because it's just too on the point.
I was actually thinking of her as Gold Glider, but
I can see that.
Like that's, I mean, we're starting to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was trying to also include people that were at least on the show at least once.
Oh,
so like I know Weather.
Like, yeah.
So like Weather Wizard was at least on the show.
Yeah, I think Mr. Freeze was too at some point.
He was, yeah.
So that could be Oldhim too. What does Dromai belong anywhere?
I didn't have Dromai on my list. The only other person I had was Chain was my Scarecrow.
Oh, sure, that makes sense. And so we're missing Dash, Azalea, Arachne. Feel like they should all belong somewhere, but they could be the outsiders at this
so like I
point.
said, Azalea was my Green Arrow and Dash was my Lantern villain.
Oh, that's right. Azalea was your Green Arrow, not Lexi. Okay,
right. Because I just felt like she was the better fit because she's more generic. Yeah. I kept trying to come up with a good fit for Lexi, but it was really difficult. She doesn't have.
Yeah, she's almost a lantern, honestly. And there are multiple Green Lanterns. You can just kind of dish those things out. And she'd be or would she be a Star Sapphire?
She could also be like a Black Canary potentially, but
oh sure. I mean, I'm kind of thinking of like Lexi is almost a Star Sapphire though. Just because, like the difference in emotions and stuff like that. At any rate, we are way down a rabbit hole now because we're talking about like Lantern Corps and who the Red Lanterns be at that. No, you know, let's stop. Let's just stop. Okay. We're good here. We're gonna get the fuck out of here is what we're gonna do.
Wait. I have one last. I'm gonna introduce a new thing to the show, Logan.
I approve.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
It's called Host Questions.
Host questions,
not listener questions. Host questions. So
okay,
because I know you're a faithful listener and you sent in the question for this week, Keith. I want to ask you, host to listener. I want to know why your Discord username is violin spelled backwards. I await your call.
Okay, so that is the question out to the listeners. Is Keith, why is your username on Discord violin spelled backwards? We do await an answer with bated breath. And that can come via email, tweet, or Discord message. But please let us know because now we have inquiring minds.
I will also accept a singing telegram.
Yes, we will. Yes, we accept singing telegram. That much is true.
We really need to get out of here. I'm losing it, man.
We do. I am starting to get a little bit punchy. And I still have to edit this fucking thing. So let's do shouts out to our Patreon members. We have as associate producers Andy and Kenny. For executive producers and on up, we have Chris, Nick D, Josh, Mike B, Mike P, Popo Mike, how you doing, buddy? Teague, Ed, May L, Philip, and Taylor. If you are interested in joining our Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/fleshandpod. The link will be in the show notes. You can also find us on Twitter at fleshpod. We will be tweeting out episodes and then sometimes telling Flake to hold his fucking horses because he was tapping his watch like he was expecting an episode today. It's not fucking Tuesday, you idiot. Love you, buddy, but stop being dumb. Although he's probably still stuck in an airport right now waiting for Air Canada to actually fly out his flight. Oh, did he? I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was impressed.
That was way earlier than I expected. I would have taken a beating on that one. Then you can also send us an email at fleshandpod@gmail.com or join us on our Discord. The link will be in the show notes. You can find me at Logan Peterson on Twitter, talking shit to Flake. And you can also find me in the Discord talking shit to the rest of the Discord. Derek, where can they find you?
Also in the Discord talking shit to Flake. And on Twitter at that Charmer, but it's Charm3R, but it doesn't matter because you can't remember who I am or how to spell my name anyway. I'm just Charmer on Twitch and on YouTube. I actually posted a YouTube video about Flesh and Blood multiplayer stuff recently, so you should check that out. And you can find me on this show next week.
It's quite good. The video is, I did watch it because, well, I was hoping to catch a little bit of skin, but I didn't. And, but the video was quite good. And so good content out of you, Charmer. I am not known for my quality of content, so one of us definitely needs to hold up that brand. But, I think that we're out of here, man. We will talk to you all next week. Bye.